Good afternoon. Alexander has said everything about our Putin, man-eater. He has his birthday today, so I can talk about journalism. But I have to start with what is happening in Russia now. Yes, maybe I'm not sure what you have on the news, on your daily news. So maybe I will repeat some things. First thing, on the 21st of September, our government started mobilization. And say, in 2 weeks, they drafted maybe 200, 300,000 people. We don't have exact numbers. The first number is official. This our idiotic Ministry of Defense gave it several days ago, and 300 is expert evaluation. Yes, but it's clear that mobilization is going to continue, and Russian officials and experts all over the world, they say that it makes no sense. It will make no sense if they take less than 1 million people. At the same time, Russian immigration not started for sure, because we had many waves of this immigration during Putin times. But this is a new wave, because people don't want to go to the army, they don't want to kill, and they don't want to die, so they have to flee. It is the same thing with numbers, because you have normal migration, yes, and people go to some countries and then they come back. And how to calculate this difference between this normal migration and extraordinary migration? It's difficult, because they can go to another country and so on, and not just arithmetic. But according to the updates from Russia, close or not so close neighbors like Kazakhstan, Georgia, Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, you have the list there, from those countries who have to accept Russian migrants, it is also between 200,000 and 300,000 people during 2 weeks. Here, what it looks like. That is mobilization, one of many, many, many photos, many shots on internet. People are going to be killed soon, I guess. Please mind how many bags and packages they have. This is because when they join the army, they are not given any supplies. No, they get their gun, maybe, and some bullets, and this is it. All other things they have to bring along by themselves or ask their relatives to buy. And here is immigration. This is crossing border point Verkhny Lars to Georgia. They never had so many people at once, so there is a huge, very, very long queue from Russia to Georgia, which takes maybe, I don't know how it is today, but several days ago it was about 6 days. They had to wait to cross the border. You can see very many bicycles here, and the reason for these bicycles is this crossing is just for people who have some vehicle, normally for cars, but not so many people have cars, you know. So they come to this crossing point and they buy a bicycle or a bike formally to have some vehicle. yes? And this bike helps them to cross the border. The same, or nearly the same, catastrophe is on other crossing points from Russia. In airports to Armenia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and it looks the same, but it's with Ukrainians who want to leave Russia, via Baltia, and they have the same kind of line for days now in Pskovskaya Oblast, Pskov region. But let's go further. Do Russians protest? Yes, I would say, a little.
Я уже ничего не боюсь. Самое ценное, что они могут у нас отнять, это жизнь детей. Я жизнь ребенка своего не отдам.
Бояться нужно было раньше. Все уже худшее произошло, но только хуже еще.
Демонстрация. Требуем прекратить противоправные действия. В противном случае вы будете привлечены к ответственности. Помоги!
Как сказала Наталья Витальевна.
Нет мобилизации! Нет войне! Нет войне! Спокойно, аккуратно с вами!
Ты не здесь не сам, уводи его, уводи отсюда! Нет войне!
So you see, protests and so on, but you know that all news on TV or on YouTube, they always look tremendously important and so on. But if you take figures, numbers, what can we see? We see that just a little bit more, 1,500 people were detained. I mean, in the whole country, not just in one town. During a week after mobilization was started, to 2,500. And since beginning of this hot, full-scale war with Ukraine, 7 months, I guess, it's just 17,000, yes. But the population of Russia is 147 million people. So if you take just this number of detainees, then you see that that during more than half a year, just 100% of people were punished. So I don't see and I don't expect any mass protests in Russia now. Because why? Yes, this is the question. Why? Because there is a huge fear. What does fear mean? Here I have to show you another video. This is a municipal council, little district in Moscow, capital of Russia, and they have their meeting on their daily usual things, yes? They have to vote some plan of activities for the next month, like a competition of kids' pictures, yes? Nothing. I will show you if I find it.
Вопрос о согласовании сводного календарного плана по досуговой, социально-воспитательной, физкультурно-оздоровительной и спортивной работе с населением по месту жительства в Красносельском районе на второй квартал 2022 года. Докладчик депутат Горинов.
Уважаемые коллеги, в Совет депутатов поступил план досуговой работы на второй квартал.
This guy says that he is not going to vote any idiotic children pictures competition plan because we have war in Ukraine, children die, their parents die, and so on. I will skip some part. It's just a show.
Я считаю, что вот все усилия гражданского общества должны быть направлены только на то, чтобы остановить войну и вывести войска России с территории Украины. Вот если бы пункты планов были посвящены этим вопросам, я бы с удовольствием проголосовал. Ну, цинично же как-то, согласитесь?
Действительно, Николай, зациклились, вы правы, зациклились. Вы правы абсолютно.
Я считаю, это главный вопрос сейчас всего гражданского общества.
And this another man on the corner, he says, yes, he supports his colleague. And this woman, chairman of this committee, she says that she always supports him. As you can see, no turmoil, no scandals, nothing. And I will show you the result now. Can you read it? This guy with gray hair, yes, he is the first convict on a new article of our criminal codex. This is up to 15 years for fakes. About military, Russian armed forces. What kind of fakes? For example, that they conduct war in Ukraine. This is a typical fake. He got 7 years of prison already, and he's serving his 7 years behind the bars. This other guy, actually, he's one of the leaders of the opposition. He was detained maybe a pair of months ago, and now he's on trial, and he can be given up to 15 years. This woman, beautiful woman, she had to leave Russia, so she's a convict at large, I would say. I just wanted. It is not strange that no one wants to repeat this kind of track record. But this story that some people in Russia even support war, and definitely most of them support Putin. This is not just a story about repressions. This is a story about Russia and about Russian people, and I think it will be interesting to mention some facts here. Why they like Putin? Putin, maybe you know that his presidency started 22 years ago. Actually, a little bit earlier, even a little bit earlier. But formally, he became president of Russia for the first time in 2000. So he had more than 20 years to run Russia, to do some reforms and so on. And he was very lucky because at the point he became the president, oil prices started to grow drastically. And when he started his presidency, Russia was poor. I mean, not Russia as a country, but Russian government, Russian budget was half empty. But in the first year, he got plenty of money, plenty of oil and gas money from Russian experts. So he got money to pay people, to pay pensions that were not paid for maybe 10 years, I mean accurately, were not paid accurately day and day. There were delays. To pay salaries to officials, government officials, and people remember this. Yes, I give just two numbers. That 100, it was an average salary in the beginning of his term, and 1,000 20 years later. Sure, we cannot compare these two numbers directly because there is inflation, changes of rates, I mean currency rates and so on. But the real income adjusted to inflation rates, to the changes of taxes and so on, real income tripled. Actually, now, if we take the first point, if we take 2000 as the first point and 2022 as the last point, it's doubled because last 7 years there was a decline, but still, yes, real incomes. To understand what reasons people to support or not to support the government, we can use this model, kind of model. Yes, that Russia, it's very one place of Russia is very different from another. Yes, we have maybe 4 or even more countries in one country. This is not just because it's so spacey, but for historical reasons. But for us, for our purposes, it's important to mention that there are at least 3 Russias. One Russia, this is the Russia of big cities, more than, say, 500,000 people, or million, or like Moscow, maybe 15 million. You will find the same in Europe. Some countries are poor, some countries are rich. If you come to Moscow, then maybe it's more like Berlin. And if you come to Yekaterinburg, it's maybe like Bucharest. Yes, but these cities are rich. They have diversified economy. People there have higher education. Normal global people. In numbers of population and share, I would say that it's maybe 20% of Russian population. Second Russia is also urbanized, but the cities are not so big. Yes, little towns, and what kind of job you can find in such a town? If there is a factory, maybe this factory was built in Soviet times, so it's old, and so on. But if you have a big factory, then all the city, all the town, people work for this factory. Not necessarily for the factory itself, yes, but this factory has suppliers, people who work there need to eat something, and so on, this multiplication effect. But the core thing is this factory. They are so-called mono-towns. Yes, we have about 150 of them in Russia. And some of them are quite big, maybe like Brno. Yeah? And the third Russia, very poor people, mostly in villages, mostly below poverty line. I told you that maybe this big city share is 20%, then maybe this poorest share is 20% too. Yes, and the rest is 60%. 60% is this, how to call them, middle Russians. I don't know. Let's see what what happens in these three Russias when some important event takes place, like war, the most important event since 30 years ago, I guess, since the revolution when the Soviet Union failed. In big cities, we have some protests. This video I've shown you, it's about big cities mostly. But in these big cities, what Russian government invented? First thing, they will not touch them much. So if they want to take people to the war, then they will avoid Moscow or take several people from Moscow, but they will draft people from the poorest part of Russia. And this is certainly not the topic, but all atrocities we knew about, which were committed by Russian soldiers, like Bucha, Andreevka, Makarov, all actually in all villages where they stayed in Kiev district. Now we see cops, tortures, and such things. They are from the poorest, ignorant part of Russia, from this third Russia. So in big cities, people try to protest, but Russian government has this method of targeted repressions. What does it mean? You see 100 people discuss something not what doesn't suit Russian government's ideology. They will take one, and even not put him to prison or her to prison. Maybe give him a little fine or just show that you should not do that. I will tell you without fines a bit later. Russia villages, this poorest part, it doesn't think about politics. It just has no time. What's about this middle Russia? It's interesting. I started this section with two numbers that their salaries grew 10 times, yes, nominal salaries. And for many people, at least for this 60%, it was a miracle. Because if you take history of Russia, maybe last 100 years or a bit more, you will see that in the beginning of 20th century, there was a revolution, then civil war, there was First World War, then revolution, then civil war, then Second World War, then difficult years after that, then stagnation of last Soviet years, then shock therapy reforms when government tried to build market economy. So this is 100 years of adventures. They are very poor and very tired. And maybe this was the first period of when Putin came to power. Maybe this was the first period for 4 generations in Russia when they can just live normal, peaceful life. Here, this caricature is about credits. Yes, if you cannot read Russian. Credit, this option to take a credit and buy, say, a new car. Most people had no cars in Russia during 20th century. To buy some consumer goods like fridges, washing machines, good dishes. Okay, consumer goods. here's a quote. If you can read it, you better read it yourself. I'm not going to read it loudly. It's a good piece from an opinion from the Moscow Times, which is the co-organizer of this of today's event. Yes, I'll give you a little bit of time, because when I found this abstract, it's very good, and I thought about it in the same words for several years. To finish this section about three Russias and basics of Russian socio-economic, I want to say that it is very stable, and 1 year ago, it was impossible to imagine that Putin will step down any day. Then he started the war, and then this mobilization, I think it violated the main social contract in Russia, which the contract exists between government and this 60% middle Russia. Yes, government can do what it wants, but do not bug this 60%. Do not touch them, do not disturb them. I think mobilization violated the social contract, and we will see some expected, unexpected things in Russia in the nearest time. A few portraits of elite. When Putin was telling us that he is going to incorporate 4 districts, 4 regions of Ukraine 2 weeks ago, I had to listen to him because I was in charge. This is my job. But it was very boring, so I made some screenshots. Just please look. Look at their faces. This is Russian elite. It's like no comment. Look at their happy faces. Well, and then I have to say a few words about journalism, I guess. I'm running out of time, so this part is going to be brief. For 20 years, Russian government was trying to suppress Russian journalism. And it started quite slightly, under disguise of some good reasons that they want to help them, to improve something and so on. And each time, for many years, they were lucky to persuade even people like me at the beginning that they have good intentions, yes? And I will just show some, I would say, 3 steps of development of these excuses, yes? The first one, it happened in 2001, when Putin came to power and understood that everybody can come to power if he or she controls TV. And he decided to nationalize that maybe little part of TV that was not state-owned already. I mean NTV, this is so-called new television or independent television, it depends. How was it done? It's written here. This NTV, they played politics in 90s, they had a huge debt. Government took this debt and said, you guys, so you have to give your assets to pay it. And took it. It was a long story. It continued. It was long, loud scandal for 2 years or maybe more. But what people think, okay, they borrowed some money, then they have give it back. They don't have money. They give assets. It was actually, when we look to these events from today's point, it's obvious for everyone that that was the beginning of the end of the freedom of speech. But on those days, it was not so obvious. Just, they called it dispute of economic entities. Second point, in 2013, there was such a deputy minister of mass communications, Alexei Volin. You can read it during my speech. Why is it important what he did or what he said? Because he was in charge of media policy of the government. He was in charge of media industry in Russia. So, well, he came to Russian University, to the Faculty of Journalism, and made some declaration, like it's bolded here, yes? Any journalist must firmly remember that he has no task to make the world better. But what task does he have, or she? The only task is to serve your boss, to help your boss make more money. This was the guy who was in charge of media industry policy. Why is this important? Why I consider this as an excuse? When they ask today's propagandists, why do you lie all the time? Why don't you say any word of truth on TV or elsewhere, anywhere? They reply, but we work for the state. Yes, the state, government pays us. They hired us. And so, what? We have to work for our government, for our employer. What are you expecting us to do? This is, let's say, new ethics of state officials in Russia. We are going to do, to say any lies or to commit any atrocities because this is the interest of our state. We have to defend these interests, yes? And they are justifying this way all bad things they do. Yes, and the third part, it was on the same year, 2013, when all state agencies, news agencies, were packed into one holding, like RT, maybe you heard about it, this is Russian television, propagandistic television in many countries. It was forbidden in Europe not long ago. All of them were packed into one holding, and this holding was given to Dmitry Kiselyov. Here's his photo. With the special task, and here is his declaration, that there is no detached journalism anymore, yes? Nobody is objective. CNN is not objective, and BBC is not objective. So why should we be objective then? Why should we tell truth? No reason. We work for the state. Yes, this is another propagandist. A few words about now. Russia has no media market. It had, and it was not bad in the 90s. All journalists who want to do normal, real job are fired. And this gave us this change of scene. Some people can find another type of job. Maybe some of them could go to PR, some can start another business, some can emigrate. But there are people for whom journalism is a calling, yes? And under normal circumstances in daily professional life, I met them very rarely. You know, if you have an editorial crew of 100 people, then if you have 3 or 5 people of that kind, you're lucky, because this is your scoop, a daily scoop. But this selection under government oppression, it changed many things, and so now if you look at new media that were started maybe in 2010s, even 1 or 2 years ago, you see that most people who work there, this is their real calling. What kind of media these little ones are? First, this is not business anymore. This is not business, I mean media business, when you start a new media to get profit. Yes? It's impossible to do business in the country when each investor who will give his funds to media is going to be persecuted, prosecuted, and the media is going to be closed. No investment. So the main source of funds for these little projects are grants. Grants from international organizations, or I would say the last donor, mostly Western governments, like government of the United States or government of European Union or Scandinavian countries. So this is a new era. Little media who just work to do journalism because this is their calling. No business, no market, nothing anymore. Just work. When our government saw that their work of oppression of media market came to this result, that some people insist they want to stay in journalism and do it this way, like small media orgs, and take money from abroad, then they started to fight it. Yes, which ways? Mostly with threats, actually. We got a set of, I call them here labeling laws, but what it means, if you have any public activity, including you post something on Facebook or on other social nets, or you just say something, I'm not talking about events like this. If you just say something in public, and at the same time you get $1 from abroad, you're a foreign agent. You have to go to the Department of Justice, register there, and it's a whole procedure. Then, if some organizations are considered really dangerous for the state, they can proclaim this organization undesirable. Yes, I'm lucky. I work for 2 orgs which were proclaimed. What is the penalty? The penalty is frightening. Normally, it works this way: fine, fine, fine. When you collect 2 or 3 fines, then they open a criminal case. But this legislation, it didn't work like that. It is beginning now, but it didn't work like that. This is more about threats. Yes, you have to live and know all the time that you have to go to this Department of Justice and register there, or you are going to be punished. And that they have this option to open a criminal case. How many foreign agents are in prison now? No one. No one, finally. Nearly all of them fled Russia. Not because they are foreign agents, but because of the war, for sure. But it's just threats. This is idiotic law, this scheme of this enterprise. They pass an idiotic law, threatening, dangerous, and so on. And then they use very, very targeting law enforcement. Yes. How many people were brought behind bars because this undesirable status? I guess I can remember just one, and he is a politician. More threats than action. But now, after February, this fake law, yes, with 15 years of imprisonment for dissemination of any, I would say, any true information about the war, it made this period, this liberal period of repressions over. So most people had to flee Russia to the neighbors. I enlisted them previously, or to Europe. The last point. When I was going to prepare for this lecture, I wanted to talk about journalism mostly. But in process, I understood that this, say, text, it won't live without context. And so I'm sorry, but my speech consists mostly of context, not of text. But not to disappoint you, I want to show you this slide. We have many stories about repressions, journalists are heroes, this immigrated and this was detained and so on. But all these stories, they are, first thing, mostly about these big cities, 20% of the population of Russia. And secondly, how many media outlets can I count right now? Okay, maybe I will count 20. Actually, I think if I need to put them all on the list, I will find 50. But this morning I opened state web page. 151,000 media outlets are licensed in Russia today. So, what share? And all these, of course, there are corporate media, entertainment media, different types. But, 50 and 150,000. This is a very little share of a median, say, existing media non-market. And one last shot about impact. 3 or 4 years ago, impact meaning how journalism can help. 3 or 4 years ago, when I was in Russia, and many more people who had to emigrate now were in Russia, there was an event like that. A friend of mine, he invited several good investigative editors and journalists. I'm not going to name them because these names won't give you anything. But believe me, Pulitzer laureate, experienced guy, well known in all the world, I mean the other one. So there were 5 or 6 of them. And they were discussing journalism, and I had a question. Actually, I passed it over to the moderator and asked him to ask them, and he did. Have you ever seen that after your publication, after your best of the best Pulitzer Prize investigation, anything changed in real life. And all 5 said no. They are guys, maybe, but there are some younger guys, so they have a track record, not like me, 30 years, maybe some of them have 15. But all 5 of them said no, no impact, it had no impact. And one of them said that, yes, there is some impact, sometimes you get fired. Journalism does not work without a normal political system with regular change of power. Thank you so much.